What makes the Netherlands so special? Let's find out.
Okay, so there is new money, there is old money, and then there is the Netherlands. The Dutch were arguably the first to embrace modern economic systems as they exist today. They were early pioneers of international trade, corporations, financing for those corporations, and also over-financing things until they turned into a speculative bubble. Whether it's a feature or a bug in our economies, there's a good chance the Netherlands has dealt with it in its extended history, and it's an economy that has clearly learnt from those victories and failures as well. Today, it's one of the most productive countries per capita in the world, only really been surpassed by outliers like the USA and a selection of small, resource-rich or business-friendly countries like Singapore, Norway, and Switzerland. This productivity has translated into real quality of life for Dutch citizens as well. It has some of the highest levels of human development in the world, and the ability to make certain economic trade-offs favouring living standards over outright economic efficiency. The country has the highest rate of part-time workers in the OECD by a significant margin, thanks to a culture and laws that favour all-round quality of life over headline output figures. The country also has a wealth of natural resources, including as much as 25% of the natural gas within the EU, that it's just decided not to extract due to a combination of environmental issues caused by the industry. The country was the birthplace of the resource curse, so much that it's literally called Dutch disease, so it's also learnt the hard way not to become too dependent on any one industry. Even still, foregoing the hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue that these resources could bring into the country, right at a time when the rest of Europe is desperate for energy, is a move that could only really be made by a truly unique economy. So, how did the Netherlands develop into what it is today? Why does it do everything so differently from other wealthy economies? And finally, should the Dutch model be something that more major economies adopt? Once we've done all of that, we can put one of the most unique economies in the world on the Economics Explained leaderboard. Netherlands is well known for its financial sector, with Amsterdam being home to one of the oldest stock exchanges in the world. One of the benefits of having such a strong financial hub gives is to provide capital to the economy to finance projects such as infrastructure or innovative technologies. Long-term investing is also important on a personal finance level to build wealth and secure retirement. This is why we partnered up with the investing platform Trading 212 to help you put your money somewhere where it can grow rather than lose value to inflation. Even just holding your euros in your Trading 212 account gives you 4.2% interest. What I like about Trading 212 is its simplicity. You just put whatever amount on your account and your interest is paid daily, so you can literally see how your wealth grows.
Really?
You can also withdraw your cash anytime without any restrictions or without any fees. You can use Trading 212's pies to spread out your investments into multiple companies that you can choose, and if you're not sure which companies to invest in, you can look through popular investors' pies and either copy their entire spread or take bits and pieces to adjust.
Yeah, I don't trust this type of stuff. I don't know anything about it.
To still take advantage of these incredible tools. So sign up with Trading 212 using the code EE, make a deposit, and you'll get a random fractional share worth up to 100 euros. The link is in the description, or use code EE to start investing today. The Netherlands was the first economy to do a lot of things, but something that is often overlooked in its storied history is that it was one of, if not the first countries in the world to truly benefit from skilled migration. After it claimed its independence, it became a refuge for Protestant traders fleeing persecution in France. This community helped to build what the Dutch economy has been most proficient in throughout the centuries, and that is trade. By the 17th century, the Netherlands was the largest trading empire in the world, and its merchant class shared almost as much wealth and power as its nobility.
Ooh, we definitely need to check out some videos about the history of the Netherlands. Their past history, of course. Yes, something that I don't know too much about, but it always passionate, always spark passion in me, you know, if that we can say it that way. I mean, especially the colonial stuff was something that really interested me, and I don't know too much about it, so could definitely be for a reaction video, a future reaction video.
Even still, the state was the first to introduce surprisingly modern systems like stock exchanges where people could buy into the productive industries of the country and share in their prosperity. This both acted as a way for people to improve their station, motivating them to innovate in their own businesses, but it also funded much larger operations, most notably, of course, the Dutch East and West India companies, which operated thousands of ships, had their own militaries, and ran brutal operations to harvest the wealth of their colonies. Tim Blanning, one of the world's foremost experts on European economic history, estimated that at its peak, the Dutch merchant marine fleet had 568,000 tonnes of capacity, which made up roughly half of all of the shipping capacity in Europe at the time. The dominance of the Dutch West India Company, and in particular the Dutch East India Company, have led many to claim that they were the most valuable companies of all time, even beating out modern giants like Apple and Microsoft. Now, something of a personal side note is that I hate this claim. The Dutch East India Company was arguably the first multinational, and it was incredibly dominant for its time. But the wealth of that time period was a rounding error compared to the world today. The collective capacity of all of the ships in the Dutch merchant marine fleet would fill about 3 large container ships today, and the modern merchant marine fleet has thousands of these ships. A value
That's
of $7
crazy.
trillion in today's money is often thrown around using dubious inflation-adjusted figures, but at the time, the global economy had a collective GDP of around $600 billion, again making adjustments for changing purchasing power over time. If this was true, the Dutch East India Company would have a market cap more than 7 times greater than global output, and while market capitalization and economic output measure 2 different things, that would be like Apple today having a market capitalization of $700 trillion. Not very realistic. To make matters worse, even if we wanted to ignore the complexities of adjusting early 18th century guilders to 21st century US dollars, then well, at around about the very same time, the Mississippi Company had more shares trading at a higher price. So even at the time, it wasn't the most valuable company by market capitalization, which is just multiplying the market value of a company's shares by the total number of outstanding shares. Now, the Mississippi Company was a little bit of a scam, so in terms of actual operational breadth, the VOC was far more dominant for the time. But again, that time in history just didn't have anything on the wealth of the world today. Anyway, rant tangent over, a lot of these early lessons carried through to the modern day. By the 19th century, following an occupation by France, the country reformed as the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which also includes Curaçao, Aruba, St. Martin, and it did include Belgium until they claimed independence a few years later. By this time, the country only had a shadow of its former influence. It was not industrialising as fast as other European powers, and its international trade had been massively surpassed by the British Empire. To add insult to injury, even Belgium, the breakaway state, started to exceed it in industrial might for most of the 19th century. But the country turned that around by doing what they did best and creating a system where they combined a private industry-friendly environment and modern mechanical technology. Following the Second World War, the country was also blessed with finding large reserves of natural gas to service the energy needs of a rapidly developing Western Europe. But of course, this was a blessing in disguise. We have addressed the issue of Dutch disease many times on this channel before, but we've never actually explored its namesake. The Netherlands found a massive gas field in its north in 1959, which made it a highly competitive energy provider given its proximity to Europe and its ability to trade this energy globally. Now, in short, a natural resource discovery should be a good thing for an economy because it gives it a source of revenue that it can use to improve the lives of its citizens. But it can also drive up the value of the economy's currency, making industries uncompetitive in export markets. It also makes imports comparatively cheaper, which means people spend more of their money abroad rather than domestically. A single dominant and highly profitable industry like natural resources often also sucks up investment into the economy because why would investors put their money into some kind of risky new industry with uncertain returns when they could just invest it into extracting natural resources with far more predictable returns? Above all else, having an economy overly dependent on one single industry also makes it highly unstable because if that industry hits hard times, it will take the entire economy down with it. Now, strangely enough, Dutch disease wasn't as bad for the Dutch as it was for a lot of other countries, because they had the benefit of being a relatively wealthy country beforehand. One of the best ways to fight the impacts of Dutch disease is to tax the short-term revenues from the industry and use them to invest long-term into building out other industries.
Bro, this is so complicated.
into the economy slowly over time.
What the hell? I need a degree of economy to understand this.
That strategy is much more difficult to accomplish politically in a poorer country where people could genuinely see a significant quality of life improvement from using those short-term revenues as soon as they become available. Today, the country is once again an economic powerhouse thanks to a diverse array of highly value-adding industries that leverage the global economy rather than just its domestic industries. The country is still very accommodating to global businesses, and it's a popular hub for international companies to use as a base of operations within the European Union. The country's efforts to attract international business have been so generous, in fact, that it has in some cases got the country into a bit of trouble because it was starting to act like a bit of a tax haven within the EU. But even outside of loophole tax codes, the Netherlands has just established itself as a very easy place to operate a foreign office. It has a lot of highly skilled workers thanks to a major investment into education, it has an incredibly robust legal system, and it has a huge diversity of native spoken languages on top of Dutch. This might not seem like a big deal, but it makes it easy for primarily English-speaking international businesses to work within the multiple major markets within Europe from a convenient central point. Even Airbus, a European company with its operational headquarters in France, has its legal headquarters in the Netherlands because it makes certain operations that much easier. Now, there are business-friendly economies everywhere around the world, and as international trade and finance have grown, there is more competition than ever for those international dollars. But what makes the Netherlands so interesting is how it has balanced this business-friendly environment with a remarkably egalitarian culture that offers a lot of liberties to its people. The Netherlands is an outlier by the number of people who work part-time over full-time in the workforce because the government...
Wow, that's crazy! Oh my god! That is insane! Look at all the countries and then Netherlands. That is crazy. Wow.
To request this arrangement from their employer without ramifications. Now, having a lot of part-time workers might sound nice, but if these workers are not part-time by choice, then this is probably not something that should be celebrated. Fortunately, in the Netherlands, most reports indicate that a majority of these part-time workers do so because they want more time to look after their families, tend to other commitments, or simply because they don't feel like working that hard. Now, economists around the world have been quite interested in this quirk of the Dutch economy for a while now, because it has the potential to be a solution for a lot of the most pressing issues we face in our own economies. A majority of the part-time workforce is comprised of women, and a lot of the motivation behind the laws that make that part-time work so popular in the Netherlands is that it was hoped it could get people working who otherwise wouldn't, and also encourage more people who are working to have a family. On the first point, this has been a great success. The Netherlands has a higher labour force participation rate than even the workaholics in the USA, and this is despite the fact that the country has a far more generous social safety net. The popularity of part-time work also means that people work until they are older, alleviating a lot of the issues of an ageing population. As for encouraging people to have a family, well, the Netherlands, like most advanced economies, is still well below the replacement rate of new births and roughly in line with most of its European peers, so it hasn't had too much of an impact here. However, if and when pressures from automation and AI start to impact the workforce, the Dutch model may be a great case study to learn from, because instead of people losing their job entirely, an economy in the process of automating would probably function a lot better if most people just started working less. There is, of course, one other benefit, which is that
less but
is
smarter.
a genuine economic luxury in and of itself, and it has shown that a country can still be highly competitive without overworking its people. Now, that being said, it's always nice to look at highly advanced economies that have the luxury of making trade-offs like letting people work part-time or opting out of natural resource revenues. But the Netherlands can do this because it's already rich. It has had centuries to build up physical infrastructure, financial infrastructure, and institutional infrastructure that makes it the success story that it is today. This is not to mention a nice infusion of cash from natural resources right before one of the most prosperous economic times in history, and a geographic position that makes it an ideal trading nation. The Dutch economy does do things differently, but this is a little bit like the difference between a rich person and a poor person doing unusual things. If the rich person does it, they are eccentric. If the poor person does it, they are crazy.
That is true.
Copying and pasting the Dutch model onto other economies might not work, but at the end of the day, even though it has been very lucky, it has capitalised on that luck to build an economy that works, and an economy that works for its people. Okay, now it's time to put the Netherlands on the Economics Explained leaderboard. Starting as always with size, the Netherlands has a highly productive country, but it is still relatively small in terms of landmass and population. Even still, with a GDP of over $1.1 trillion, it's the 17th largest economy in the world, just behind Indonesia, which takes a very different economic approach to get there. The Dutch economy gets an 8 out of 10. That output is achieved by a very small population of just under 18 million people, which means the country has a GDP per capita of $63,750. This makes it one of the most productive countries in the world, but it still falls behind the true outliers, so it gets a 9 out of 10. Stability and confidence is very high. Part of what makes it so attractive as a business destination, tourist hotspot and trade hub is the institutional stability of the country that has been doing modern economics longer than anyone else. Being a member of the EU is both a blessing and a curse in many ways, but it does mean it has a certain safety net, and it uses the world's second most widely recognised currency. The Netherlands gets a 10 out of 10. Growth has been sluggish. The Netherlands was not immune from the Eurozone crisis and the general slowdown in activity that came from it. It is starting to trend in the right direction again, but over the past decade, it's barely achieved an annualised growth rate of 1%, so it gets a 3 out of 10. Finally, industry. The country has diversified its economy extremely well. Even if it does truly follow through and completely shut down its natural gas industry, it still has tourism, finance, trade, and even astonishingly productive agriculture to fall back on. All industries that are far more stable and value-adding. It gets an 8 out of 10, only really losing points because its smaller size means that it doesn't have much in the way of its own global companies or world-leading industries. Altogether, this gives the Netherlands an average score of 7.6 out of 10, putting it way up here on the leaderboard. Now, we've mentioned the dynamics of global shipping a lot in this video because it's clearly been an integral part of the Netherlands' success story over the past 5 centuries. But we made an entire video on the dynamics of global shipping today that you should be able to click to on your screen. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.
It was a really nice video, but I feel like I lack the necessary knowledge to fully understand it because I don't know too much about the economy. That's why when people is always suggesting me, oh, you should invest your money, you should do this, you should do that, I'm never doing it because I'm always so scared of losing money because I'm jumping into an area that I have no idea about it. So if you want to suggest me some books or even just videos to check out for myself, you know, to learn more about global economy and this type of stuff, I would highly appreciate it because I want to be more, I mean, that's a very important part of everyday's life of everyone in the world. So yeah, I definitely want to know more about it. This video was really interesting. It was really cool to learn more about the Netherlands. So just keep on suggesting me videos to check out. I want to learn more about your beautiful country. See ya!